On today's morning plenary session, we have Mr. Brian Fogarty. Brian is a graduate student on assignment to the University Center for Economic Development, working on a graduate program in economics. As we kind of joke, he's a graduate student, so there's no need to applause or recognize him in any way. It is really great having Brian here. Brian actually helped quite a bit in the tallying of the survey results that we'll be discussing later today. But one person that certainly needs no introduction is the one and the only, the very famous Mr. Michael Harper. Michael, yay, Mike. Mike, of course, serves currently as the chapter treasurer and is also at FAICP and has been retired from Washoe County for, I don't know, 20, 30 minutes, where he worked there for 60, 70, 80, 100 years. It really is great to have both Mike and Brian with me today. As Mike and I, this is the second comprehensive survey and evaluation of the chapter membership that we've completed, and then of course involving Mr. Fogarty in the work and the results of the survey as well. And as the slides are to my back, I'm actually going to transition a little bit, figure out how to use the remote mic, that way I can see the slides a little bit as well. The membership survey of the Nevada chapter of the American Planning Association is actually a continuation of a survey that Mike Harper and the chapter sponsored back in 2011. And the purpose of the survey that was completed in 2011 was really to determine whether or not you, members of the chapter and practicing professional planners in the field of planning throughout the state of Nevada, were really believing and felt that your past education in the field of planning and public administration and public budgeting and finance really satisfied your needs as a practicing professional planner. Marco, you're looking at me funny. Everything's fine? We're getting a thumbs up on the mic? Fantastic. And in addition to that, we really wanted to continue to identify opportunities to develop a comprehensive planning curriculum for graduate programs throughout the United States, as well as here in the state of Nevada. At the time in 2011, the formal planning program, Masters of Land Use Planning, was located in the Geography Department at the University of Nevada, Reno. And due to the budget cuts that the university and the Nevada system of higher education experienced as a result of the Great Recession of 2008 and 2009, unfortunately the planning program, while currently still officially on the books, was essentially darkened. Existing enrolled students were allowed to complete their program and graduate, but no new students had been allowed to enroll, and no new students have been currently admitted to the program since 2008. As a result, especially of the recovery that the state of Nevada has enjoyed post-recession, there has been ongoing discussion, both from the chapter's perspective, but as well amongst the members of the Board of Regents of the Nevada System of Higher Education and the administration and leadership at both the University of Nevada, Las Vegas and the University of Nevada, Reno, to begin to look at the feasibility and possibility of developing a new master's in land use planning, or a related degree in public administration located on one of the campuses and in one of an appropriate college or school. As a result of that possibility, again, a part of the membership survey that we completed back in 2011 was to provide guidance on what that curriculum should look like. And as a result of the 2011 survey, Mike Harper and I actually completed and published a University of Nevada Cooperative Extension special publication through the University of Nevada Reno Press, really outlining what we felt would be a model curriculum that would really answer the needs of the current planning community in the state of Nevada, but also provide the education and the technical skills and training that would be needed of future planners as they work through their graduate program. The survey itself back in 2011 consisted of a total of 29 questions. And for those of you that were around in 2011, this won't seem too unfamiliar, but we really wanted to ask a variety of questions regarding the overall demographic, educational, and kind of socioeconomic makeup of the membership. And trying to really kind of understand what the chapter looks like. You know, are we getting younger? Are we getting older? Are we representing the diversity in terms of age, race, ethnicity, and gender that currently exists throughout the state of Nevada? We also wanted to know whether or not members of the Nevada chapter of the American Planning Association, as practicing professional planners, you know, were they earning competitive wages and were their employment relatively stable? Or you know, there are things that the chapter can do to advocate for the membership to different organizations that employ different planners, making the argument, of course, that you know, individuals who receive formal education and training, especially in the world of planning and related fields like public administration and public policy, is there a rationale to advocate for additional salary and benefits to practicing planners? And then we kind of shifted gears in the survey and really started to look at various statements on the outlooking of planning, specifically asking chapter members to identify what they felt were kind of the big ticket items in the world of planning in the foreseeable future. And then from there, of course, develop curriculum and professional development opportunities that met that need and demand for planning education as well. And then finally, just an identification of various skills related to planning education. What are the skills that are required of practicing planners in the profession currently, and what are the identified skills in the future that are going to be relatively important for planners and policy analysts and practitioners of public administration. As a result of the survey and kind of our own examination of various planning curriculum through the United States, I will note that Mike Harper, for a number of years, has served on the Planning Accreditation Board for various universities, you know, accrediting and reviewing their curriculum for continuing accreditation. Based upon Mike's many years of experience on the Planning Accreditation Board, but also our own literature review, and then finally, based upon the results of the membership survey back in 2011, we really identified 5 basic assumptions that would really kind of help develop the model curriculum that we developed. First being the proposed curriculum that I'll share with you in just a minute is really better suited to a master's degree in planning. And to kind of continue the tradition that the master's degree in planning tends to be the terminal degree, especially for individuals who will be leaving the academic world for a job within the profession, either in the public sector or the private sector. And that a bachelor's program in planning would probably be best suited for individuals who may go out to the world of work, but also come back after a number of years of practical experience in the profession and then continue on their education with a terminal degree in the Master's of Planning. And that a doctoral or PhD program in planning would probably be best suited for individuals who will remain in the academic world as professors teaching the next generation. So the curriculum that we identified here is really best suited, again, for individuals that are seeking out that terminal degree in planning. We also made the assumption that a master's degree in planning is widely viewed as a professional degree, as opposed to more traditional academic programs. Mr. Fogarty is studying currently for his master's in economics, which is really kind of more oriented towards an academic discipline. Hopefully it will open the doors for him for work down the road, but as an economist, you really are expected to kind of operate more as an academic, you know, in terms of not dealing with day-to-day issues, but thinking more long-term. As a more professional degree, it really is about building a toolbox. And building that toolbox in a way that provides the owner of that toolbox with a series of tools and skills that they can apply to the day-to-day activities in their profession. Of course, in many ways, planning is about the future and about thinking long-term. So we kind of had to put the asterisk next to this assumption and also understand that there had to be that kind of academic component in pushing individuals to kind of think more comprehensive and long-term and future-oriented in their approach to being a practicing professional. Our third assumption was that the proposed curriculum, again, that I'll share with you in a second, is really intended to prepare those pursuing a career as a planner in either the public or private sector, as opposed to degrees and educations in public administration or public policy. My terminal degree for me was a doctorate in policy planning and development from the University of Southern California. And within the Sol Price School of Public Policy, planning, public policy, and public administration are put together in a single school and form kind of the backbone of the educational offerings of the Sol Price School. And the rationale for that is that there are legitimate connections and relationships between being a planner, being a public administrator, and then engaging in public policy analysis. However, a degree, especially a master's degree in planning, will have very unique educational requirements as opposed to master's degrees in public policy and public administration. So the curriculum that we developed is not necessarily for individuals who will become administrators and managers in the field of public administration or policy analysts in the world of public policy, but specifically for those individuals who will continue to be a practicing professional planner for the remainder of their career. The fourth assumption that we had is that, honestly, and this is kind of trying to remain humble a little bit, that the proposed curriculum will likely not be sufficient to provide all the skills that a planner will be required to have as a professional planner. And we leave that space there really for professional associations like the American Planning Association and other associations like the American Society for Public Administration, the International City-County Management Association, the International Economic Development Council, and other organizations to really provide very specific professional development opportunities, but those professional development opportunities can be built upon kind of the foundation that our proposed curriculum identified. And then finally, that the proposed curriculum must meet the accreditation standards identified in the Planning Accreditation Board's outline. It does not make any sense really for you as a practicing professional to earn a degree in planning from a university or other educational institution that does not follow those standards, especially if you go on to earn your AICP certification. So we really developed a curriculum that was really tied to those accreditation standards for the benefit of students that would graduate with that degree, but also for the discipline as a whole. Producing students who graduated, master's students with a degree in planning, that really kind of meet a very high standard that the Planning Accreditation Board has established. This is, in a nutshell, the curriculum that we identified, and I'm not going to go through the whole thing. In fact, I would strongly encourage you to take a look at the University of Nevada Cooperative Extension special publication that Mike and I published, I believe, in 2012. It is available on the University of Nevada, Reno's website, specifically www.unce.unr.edu, and if you just type in my last name or Mike's last name, you won't have any problem finding that special publication. But if you want me to email you a copy of that publication, a stack of my business cards are on the not so subtle College of Business table over there. Feel free to send me or Mike or even Brian an email, and we would be more than happy to share this curriculum with you. But as you can see, the curriculum itself is really kind of divided between practical skills, if you're using, GIS, public speaking, policy analysis, thinking about, all the various practical skills that individual planners utilize, and then moving more into the theoretical constructs of planning as well as the role that individual planners fill as true public servants. I always, when I have the opportunity to talk to groups that are not planners, I always start by saying, the tradition and history of planning in the United States and North America harkens back to, the late 1920s, early 1930s, and the passage of the Standard State Zoning Enabling Act. And the reason that we passed that act and developed professional planning is that life was awful in the built environment at the turn of the 20th century. We here in the year 2016 have a very romantic view of the urban environment or the built environment. As we heard today from the mayor of Boulder City is a wonderful pedestrian-oriented community with lots to do. You know, many bars and pubs and restaurants and wonderful shopping opportunities and historical landmarks to visit and recreate in. That was not the reality of the built environment in New York and Boston and Chicago and Cleveland and San Francisco at the turn of the 20th century. The urban environment was a bad place to be, not uncommon, for typhoid and other communicable diseases to spread like wildfire through the urban environment. Not uncommon, for running clean water to be unavailable at weeks at a time, for human and animal waste just spread out wherever. Human corpses just rotting in the streets. And there was a general demand from the public that had to end. That if humanity and our built environment and our great nation were to move forward, we needed professionals, people who were trained, to build water systems and maintain them, and to adequately plan for that growth. And over the course of what is really kind of referred to and identified as the bureaucratic reform movement, we developed technical skills. But the curriculum that we identified tries to connect to that long tradition by emphasizing administrative ethics and the responsibility that individual planners have, especially coming out of graduate school, to be good stewards of the public's trust. So this balancing act between technical skills, quantitative skills, analytical skills, and the more theoretical constructs was vital to really developing a planning curriculum that can prepare students upon graduation of being planners in effective and meaningful ways. In addition to that curriculum that we developed, the great news is that we've been able to use the results of the survey to develop a whole series of professional development opportunities in partnership with the chapter. As you'll hear tomorrow in one of the breakout sessions, Mike and I have collaboratively developed the University of Nevada, Reno's Nevada Leadership Program. And the Nevada Leadership Program, a program located in the College of Business, is designed to work with elected and appointed officials, government executives, members of the public, community leaders, to really begin to build, again, a set of technical skills, but also appreciative understanding of the role of public servants, specifically planners, policy analysts, economic development professionals, and public administrators. The Nevada Leadership Program actually began as the Local Leaders Institute as a pilot program through Cooperative Extension, and then has evolved into the program that we currently use today. Another very kind of important use for the survey from 2011 was a variety of work and curriculum that both the chapter and the university has collaboratively developed. Julie Hunter has been a champion of developing the chapter's current planning guide, and we hope to have that planning guide sent out to all of you in the entire chapter for review and evaluation after this conference. And the planning guide is really kind of built chapter by chapter based upon what individual survey respondents from 2011 and then the current survey that we have just completed here in 2016 said are the important issues that they want information on. And of course, ongoing brown bags, the development of this conference and the curriculum that's used in this conference and the individual sessions that you have an opportunity to go to are really all designed around the needs that the membership have identified through both the 2011 and 2016 survey. So kind of flash forward, 5 years later to 2016, and we, as the executive committee for the Nevada chapter of the American Planning Association, I believe it was July or June that we had our executive committee meeting. Was it June, July?
You mean down here?
Yeah.
May.
And that's how the life of a junior faculty goes. Back in May of this year, the Executive Committee of the Nevada Chapter of the American Planning Association met here in Las Vegas, actually at the UNC Lifeline Learning Center, just off of Paradise Road, for a day to start kicking the tires on the chapter and the direction of the chapter. And halfway through the executive committee meeting, I realized that we had done this survey back in 2011. I'm like, well, maybe if we're going to talk about the direction of the chapter, we should know something about what the chapter membership looks like. So we threw up the old slides and we talked about it, and we said, boy, it'd be great if we could get some updated information and update that information to see, what the chapter actually looks like from a demographic perspective, from an educational perspective, as the chapter continues to kind of move forward in its outreach efforts as well as its service efforts to the members of the chapter. So the 2016 survey, while it is identical in the questions that were asked in 2011, really serves a different purpose this time around. Whereas in 2011, we were very interested in looking at the development of a master's curriculum for planning. This time around, we were very interested in using those results to assist the chapter as well as the Nevada Leadership Program at UNR to further develop professional development opportunities for you, the individual members. Again, the exact same questions, a total of 29 of them, mailed out to the entire chapter, and then Mr. Fogarty and I spent a couple months really compiling the data and trying to tease out some general observations and conclusions. And I know that I put up a bunch of tables for the next little bit of this presentation that you'll be squinting and they'll be very hard for you to read. Brian and I, with Mike Harper, are currently working on a University Center for Economic Development technical report that will summarize all these tables and observations. And upon the completion of the peer review process, as it is a university publication, we will email that PDF technical report to the entire chapter. So you'll have all of the results and our observations and conclusions in a nice single PDF document. But for right now, I just kind of want to share with you some of the individual results. To kind of give you an idea of kind of the general population and sample size of the survey itself, we sent out a total of 292 surveys in 2011, and oddly enough, we sent out a total of 292 surveys in 2016. And we use the membership list of both chapter and national members and chapter-only members as a way, to kind of generate our mailing list. One thing that kind of strikes me here is that the number has not changed between 2011 and 2016. And again, we are using the membership of the chapter to develop our mailing list. So very quickly, one of our observations is we need to grow the membership. There have been periods of decline and periods of growth through this 5-year period, and certainly some of the anemic recovery from the Great Recession in Nevada has probably hampered the continued growth of the membership. But that becomes one observation, is that the membership size did not change over that 5-year period. We actually had not so good an overall return rate, but it's still statistically significant. If running various statistical tests of the significance of the results, we're confident to say that the overall results of the membership survey for both 2011 and 2016 do truly represent the characteristics of the chapter as a whole. However, if you see things in our observations and conclusions, either today or when we circulate the final technical report, let us know. Let us know if we're off base, if we're missing something, as we really do want to develop recommendations and an outline from the chapter's perspective as well as from the university's perspective for professional development opportunities that are consistent with what you, the membership, needs. Kind of begin with a very quick overview of the demographic results. And the one thing that we noticed very quickly, just in terms of the question, identify gender, male or female, really quickly, the chapter itself is not really representative of the gender diversity that exists within the state of Nevada. Dominated by males, at least in the survey results, 60% to essentially 40%, whereas from a state perspective, it's almost a 50-50 split in terms of the demographic breakdown. Now again, for the demographic breakdown, we are reliant on 2010 census data, just because that's the most recent census, and there's a whole host of reasons as to why you don't want to use ACS, the 1 year, the 2 year, the 5 year estimates, especially when we start talking about kind of the rural communities of the state of Nevada and some of the estimation errors that occur outside of Clark and Washoe. So we decided to just stick with census data. We also stick with census data because that is what we used in 2011 as kind of our reference point as well. And if you see NA for the 2011 results, it's because the original file that had the 2011 results were a little corrupted, so I wasn't able to get those 2011 results, unfortunately. But again, one of the quick observations here is the chapter is not representative of the gender diversity that is the state of Nevada. And if the chapter, as a group of professional planners who are responsible for developing almost kind of an agenda in terms of identifying and representing the interests of the people of the state of Nevada as public services, we may not be representative of those actual needs by not having a fairly similar gender breakdown in terms of our membership relative to the state's overall population. That goes for the same thing for the average age of the chapter membership. So not only are we kind of moving towards a chapter dominated by males, but it's also dominated males that look like my partner, who are either retired or have moved. One person retired. Which again is a challenge to, as the chapter, be able to represent the interests of individuals at all age groups throughout the spectrum. As one thing that we kind of joked about when we started to look at these results, and it's a tongue-in-cheek joke because it does kind of represent a bit of a challenge to the chapter, but also an opportunity in terms of outreach. In addition to the chapter being relatively old, it is relatively white, dominated by older white men, which again is not really representative of the diversity of the state of Nevada. The state of Nevada, especially as of the last 10 or so years, really the last 20 years, has experienced major kind of quantum surge changes in its overall socioeconomic and demographic profile. The Latino, Hispanic population, the African American population are becoming larger and more vocal and more active in the direction of public policy and even local land use planning, transportation planning, economic development planning, and other planning interests. And again, this is a challenge for the chapter, but again, also an opportunity, because it is an opportunity for the chapter to outreach to groups like a Hispanic Chamber of Commerce or the NAACP that is very active in both Las Vegas and Reno, and invite them to participate with the chapter as the chapter develops, professional developing opportunity and curriculum and material that we try to share and educate with planning commissioners and other policymakers throughout the state. It also is challenging from the perspective on the age side, and especially for the concept of sustainability for the chapter. Our chapter membership is relatively old, and as a result, especially if you look at the comparison between 2011, these results here, and the result from 2016, the chapter is actually getting older, not younger, which means as people retire and no longer engage with the chapter, that may begin to show up in the membership, and the membership numbers may begin to decline. To kind of push this a little bit, one thing that we should be doing as a chapter, from my opinion and perspective, is to be bringing in people like Brian, 22 years old. Well, maybe not Brian, because he's a little annoying, but he's okay. But reaching out to that demographic and inviting them to participate in the chapter. And the good news is we're doing that. My hat's off to the chapter for partnering with the University of Nevada, Reno, and really the Nevada system of higher education. Not only put together the Nevada Leadership Program, but last year's conference, the 2015 conference, was a poster session for students, inviting students to participate in the conference, providing them a significant student discount rate. And then, of course, this year's conference, after day, moving to Nevada State College and having a career fair, as well as a poster session, and in giving students a major break in terms of the registration price. We're not necessarily seeing a big bump in participation from the students, but it takes time to build that relationship and to get the Nevada APA brand in the mind of students. And not wanting to speak for the executive committee, but certainly speaking as an officer of the executive committee, it is certainly something I'm still committed to, is that continued effort and outreach with that youthful population, so that one day they can take the reins and be professional planners in our cities, in our counties, and various planning entities.
Right, can I add on there?
Sure.
One issue with connecting to the youth population of Nevada is there really isn't a planning education program in Nevada, and there's no clubs. The only reason I heard about it is through Fred, and bringing an e-com person to a planning session, so there might be some difficulties there. But I think it's important. Pardon me? Well, I have absolutely no planning education. I'm focused on numbers, regressions, data, and that's certainly not what Fred does.
He's an economist, so he's a dismal scientist. He doesn't get to do the fun stuff that planners get to do. But it does raise that question about, what is the chapter doing to kind of lean on the Nevada system of higher education and require maybe not a full-fledged program, but maybe begin to develop classes that can be tied to a public administration program or a public policy program to begin to introduce students to the planning process.
Even a minor in some form of planning education would be absolutely great.
I was going to say, I don't know, in my experience, in my practice, I find that economists are just as critical to what I do as a planner. I mean, they're the ones who understand the market and can help to provide the direction of these are the land uses that you might need, these are the land uses you could support. Or if you're looking at a more specific project basis, they can help you understand the funding aspects and maybe where that funding needs to come from. So I know in my experience, economists have been very helpful because I don't have a background in that.
Absolutely, and in fact, it really kind of ties into the results from 2011 and 2016, because the one thing that was very noticeable to us as we compiled the results from 2011 and 2016 is that planners are doing much more than planning. They're moving into management and administrative roles. They are asked to do fairly complex quantitative analysis, even getting into the world of regression analysis, multilinear analysis, as a way to really kind of add substance and quantitative metrics to transportation plans, economic development plans, land use plans, housing plans, and really, the results of the surveys from 2011 and 2016 kind of screen the conclusion that we have to think about planning in a much more universal context. That planning is an umbrella concept that really covers a wide variety of professional activities, from both a functional, operational level, but also up to an administrative and managerial level as well.
I'd like to add to that if I could. The reason I asked you the question I asked you is that, to me, as a planner, economists deal with the allocation of resources, and so do planners, whether it's land use or water or infrastructure, it's all resources. It doesn't have to be driven by the market necessarily. You're still dealing with resources. And when you look at one of your assumptions, which is the proposed curriculum will likely not be sufficient to provide all skills that planners will be required to have, my first question is, well, what are all the skills a planner needs? And your other assumption is you're not looking at careers, you're looking at careers in planning, and my question again, based on personal experience and professional experience, is why aren't you looking at students to become aware of what the planning profession does. Because I think, as you mentioned, and as we had yesterday in a class, we had an economics class yesterday. I don't know how many of you were aware of it, but it was one of the best economics classes I've ever had. And in a few short hours, we came away with tools as planners as to how to tell someone in a public meeting why an idea is a good idea or not a good idea, or where that not so good idea should really be going. And that was an economics class that we got as planners. I was very pleased with it, and I think that if you're concerned about dealing with the skills planners' needs, one of them is economics, another is conflict resolution, another is public administration, budgeting, all that stuff.
All the managerial functions.
All the managerial stuff. You look at the last 7 items you had on your list of issues, starting with land use, all those are public administration, management, and leadership issues.
And
Planners need to be prepared to think like leaders and managers, and which may even involve a planner in politics, if I say the word, but I think it's necessary to bring that perspective.
And that was a big part of the membership survey, and I know Mike's chomping at the bit, but we're
What
kind
I
of,
want to suggest to you is that when I started in the planning profession, when dinosaurs were still roaming the earth, actually I have a master's PA, not in planning, and the staffs were populated by people who did not have masters in planning. But I dare say that by now, you'll find that many of the planning departments and many of the private firms are dominated by masters in planning, and that's one of the reasons we wanted to look at that. The other problem, frankly, is that many of the schools that I participated in reviewing for the accreditation program really fell into either those that did practical, skills-based masters or policy-based masters, but never seemed to do both. And so students, interestingly enough, especially in the policy-based planning programs, would gravitate to the adjunct professor who was a planner at XYZ agency, because that person was actually telling them what an assessor's parcel book looked like, was telling them exactly what a zoning program might encompass, because they were looking for those types of skills. So we don't disagree with you. I think what's happened is that this push for masters, and this push, dare I say, for AICP members, and if you take the exam, by the way, I was the exam chair for 5 years for the AICP exam, tend to be very dominated by what I would consider more traditional planning issues, and did not look at things such as public administration, budgeting, and those types of issues, which are the very challenges that many of these planners, even if you're not working as a manager, you're still required to look at things like, how do I budget for this project if I'm working in the private sector? How do I deal with the administration of this? What happens about team building? Those kind of things. So that's one of the reasons we looked at that draft curriculum. And you'll notice that it doesn't exactly follow the planning accreditation board's proposal, because we felt that it needed to be actually broadened.
right, you'll see as we kind of get in the results of the fourth portion of the survey that all those skills were identified as either very important or somewhat important. But before we kind of get onto that, just to kind of move us right along, let's get to the good news in terms of some of the results. So one thing from the socio-demographic analysis is, again, the chapter membership really is not representative of the diversity of the state of Nevada, which makes it difficult for the chapter to really advocate for particular issues that relate to the interests of all Nevadans. That said, individual members of the chapter tend to be employed, and there may be a little bit of a selection bias there, as people who lose their positions in planning may drop out and not be a member anymore, so we're not capturing that. But if you are a member, typically you as a practicing professional planner earn statistically significant more than the average professional in the state of Nevada, which again kind of makes sense given the majority of practicing professional planners have bachelor's degrees, master's degree, AICP, or additional certification. You get to command a little bit better wages and income than your counterparts in other professional fields or in all industries across the board. In addition to that, we did ask individual survey respondents to indicate whether or not that they are currently employed actually as a planner. And again, more good news, the vast majority are. The one thing that we do find in the results, however, is that in addition to being currently employed as a planner, be it at a municipality, at a county, a state agency, or in the private sector, you are being asked to do many more things than just be a planner. Be an administrator, a manager, a budget officer, all those individual additional skills come into the equation as well. Not surprising that the membership itself is really dominated by practicing professional planners in the public sector. And that kind of really marries up with existing occupational employment statistical data provided by the U.S. Bureau of Labor and Statistics, where individuals with degrees in planning, public administration, and policy analysis typically work in the public sector and a smaller number in the private sector. However, a quarter of the membership working in the private sector is still significant. And again, this suggests curriculum for professional development opportunities through the chapter more oriented towards maybe some of the issues and some of the demands of our colleagues who work for private sector organizations. Currently, a lot of our curriculum, both at this conference and in the brown bags and other opportunities, are really oriented towards the planner working in the public sector. But it's probably worthwhile to really kind of outreach and talk with planners that work in the private sector to see what their specific needs are as well, and to see whether or not there's professional development opportunities that the chapter can develop specific for that particular group. In addition to that, if they do work for a public sector, municipality dominates. And again, not surprising, there are, to a certain degree, more opportunities for professional development or professional advancement in Nevada's municipalities than counties, just upon the way in which planning law is written in the state of Nevada. But still, a significant portion do work for counties as well. So again, moving forward in the development of professional development opportunities and training for the membership, the chapter should really think about, if you're going to orient professional development opportunities, it should be towards more or towards issues that are more relatable to municipal and county planners. Of course, the last thing you want to do is ignore everybody else. So the balancing act is, how do you focus on that significant portion of your membership, but also balance out with the needs of other individuals as well. And that's when our professional development officer and planning official officer reaching out and continuing to develop or provide access to various webinars where individuals can kind of pick and choose on their own, really kind of help fills that gap to a certain degree. Another question that we asked that we actually found quite illuminating and not necessarily surprising, but very, very happy about the results, is that the members of the Nevada chapter of the American Planning Association are stable in their position, working on average about 9.62 years in their current position. Instead of, and this incorporates that time, in post-recovery. So from 2016, subtract that 10 years, goes back to 2006, prior to the financial crisis and the Great Recession that was so pummeling on local government budgets. So to a certain degree, thankfully, in a lot of ways, our membership survived the recession. There was still a significant decline in membership, a noticeable one, but for the most part, our members survived to a certain degree. And I think that speaks to the skill set and the professionalism of the planning community in Nevada and what we bring to individual organizations and how important they are to the functioning of those organizations moving forward. One other thing that we found out, oh, right.
Another thing with the average number of viewers works, can we go back one slide?
Sure.
That number, 9.62 years, is almost perfectly in line with BLS's average median number of years worked at current job for 55 to 64 years old, which means that this could possibly just be a function of the fact that you guys are older.
And a little more stable and kind of developed in your career. So as we kind of recruit, maybe a younger generation of the chapter, we might expect to see this number go down, but still to see that type of stability within the membership, we feel is a fairly positive indication of the chapter membership as well. One thing that we also found was the idea and the realization that planners engage in many additional activities in the world of planning other than land use planning. Even though land use planning and codes really is probably the primary focus of the membership in terms of their professional activities, they're fairly evenly spread across things like economic development, environmental planning, infrastructure, housing, parks and recreation, management and administration, transportation planning, urban design, and a variety of other fields. And this is kind of an ongoing conversation that we have amongst the officers of the executive committee is, well, what should the topics be, for conference sessions and brown bags and other professional development opportunities? Should they focus, primarily on areas related to land use planning and codes, or should there be, every month a kind of a different approach, one on economic development, one on housing, one on infrastructure, one on management and what it means to be a management. This kind of provides that insight into the diversity of offerings that the chapter membership really needs in terms of the professional development opportunities. Another kind of important result of the survey from question 17 was the answers to what is your primary function. So what occupies the bulk of the time that you deal with when you're on the job? Advanced planning, environmental planning, and regulatory planning tend to be the areas in which get the most attention, but again a fairly even spread between economic development and then a combination of all the various items as well. So again, for professional development opportunities moving forward, and the role that the chapter serves in the education and development of our members, it suggests additional professional development opportunities in kind of these wide range of individual functions. And the next section of the survey really asked chapter members and survey respondents to identify what they felt were the major issues confronting the profession of planning moving forward into the foreseeable future. And this is a scattered shot, essentially, of all the various responses. But one thing that we find in the answer to this question, question 18, in your opinion, what challenges for planning education in North America do you see arising? Trends start to form around keywords such as climate change, sustainability, and even changing demographics. And as kind of a follow-on observation and conclusion from these results, we see that this is becoming an increasingly important issue and topic for the membership. And then again, another opportunity for the chapter, in developing professional development and educational opportunities, maybe even in partnership with the Nevada system of higher education on those particular items. As it was mentioned yesterday, as part of this conference, we held a pre-conference workshop at Nevada State College, the Fundamentals of Economic Development 2.0 workshop. And part of that was looking at location quotient and shift share analysis and the changing behavior of individual industry sectors, both here in Southern Nevada, across the state of Nevada, relative to the rest of the United States. And those shifts in industry patterns are the result of various changing demographic characteristics. The state of Nevada and the United States as a whole is getting progressively older. Our median age year after year after year in Nevada continues to creep upwards. In the last decennial census, it was 38.4 years. In the census before that, it was 32 and a half years of age. Individuals in the state of Nevada, majority of them are starting to approach the 55 years or older mark. And as individuals begin to move into that age range, they begin to change their consumption and spending patterns, which means less dollars generated in sales tax revenue, property tax revenue, and more consumption in health care or savings or other items used in anticipation of retirement. This is a primary issue that planners and budgeting officers and public administrators need to deal with, because we have a fiscal system that does not recognize that reality. It is based upon consumption as the retail sales tax and use tax as the primary source of local government revenue. With that potentially beginning to decline due to that changing economic or demographic trend, it may make it increasingly difficult for local government especially to provide services that the public demands. So this is again an area in which the chapter can be involved to essentially communicate alternative approaches and contingency plans for a demographic trend that is fairly significant and continuing to gain in momentum from one year to the next in the state. In addition to question 18, question 19 asked, in your opinion, what planning roles do you see becoming more salient over the next decade? And very similar to question 18, the planner's professional role in the areas such as sustainability and environmental planning were identified as major trends in these results, indicating again an opportunity for the chapter to kind of get ahead of that curve and begin to continue to develop professional development opportunities focused on facilitating the role of a practicing professional planner in the world of environmental planning and sustainability and other similar related fields. In addition to all of that, the final part of the 2011 and 2016 survey was really focused on asking survey respondents questions regarding the skills that they felt were most salient to their current profession as either very important, somewhat important, or not important at all. And in 4 questions that were asked in this category, overwhelmingly survey respondents indicated that all these skills are important to a certain degree. Question number 21 really focused on questions regarding theory, so understanding the law, understanding physical planning alternatives, familiarity with various laws, ordinances, policies, and institutional structures for implementation. All of them overwhelmingly were identified as either very important or somewhat important, to being a professional planner and being able to execute one's duty and responsibility and role as a planner in a way that is effective and efficient as much as possible. In addition to question 21, question 23 asked questions regarding procedural knowledge. And again, you can see that understanding and articulating the rationale for planning. Why are we here? The familiarity with the interaction of planning, implementation in markets or economic systems, and then the understanding of the planning process as a whole, all again were identified as very important skills that practicing professional planners need to have in the expectation and execution of their daily responsibilities. Question 5 was all about judgment and good sense. This is, again, focused on some various soft skills, like working well with colleagues within the organization, being a self-starter, awareness of institutional politics. And again, overwhelmingly, the chapter membership identified each one of these individual judgment and good sense skill sets as very important. And again, kind of moving forward in the development of future brown bags and conference sessions and other professional development opportunities, there's probably an opportunity here for the chapter to kind of focus some of that professional development opportunity on these quote-unquote softer skills. What does it mean to be a good team member? In a lot of ways, we've kind of done that already, Again, the Nevada Leadership Program, in partnership with the chapter, has developed a series of how-to workshops, 3-hour, once-a-month workshops focused on things like how to be an effective manager, how to be a good leader, how to build a team environment, how to communicate to individuals within the organization, how to use parliamentary procedure as a way to conduct a meeting. All those workshops are really identified to focus on these quote-unquote soft skill sets that individuals, respondents indicated, are relatively important. Then the final question really asked was methods and technical skills. What are the skill sets that you need to actually be a planner? Ranging from engaging in clear and concise in-house memo writing, writing reports, speaking formally and informally with the public and elected officials, competency in GIS, knowledge of the uses and limitations of models and forecasting, ability to access and synthesize secondary data from the Census Bureau, the Bureau of Labor and Statistics. And again, for the most part, survey respondents indicated that every one of these methods or technical skills were very important or somewhat important. And again, this probably suggests alternatives to existing curriculum and training opportunities that the chapter offers. Why not have a brown bag focused on just public speaking and the ins and outs of public speaking and how to put together a speech, an introduction, signposting, a body, a summary, and then ultimately a conclusion that ties it all back together. Again, it goes to the observation that planners do much more than just plan. They engage in quantitative analysis, and then they have to communicate the results of that analysis not only to elected officials and appointed officials, but the public. They have to be good writers, and I can tell you, after grading, paper after paper in the last, several years as a faculty member at UNR, that's a perishable skill. Individuals that don't do it on a regular basis, fall back into bad habits. So a brown bag focus on brushing up on your writing skill, is critical. And that certainly provides an opportunity for NSHE faculty in that Nevada State College, the University of Nevada, Las Vegas, and the University of Nevada, Reno each have writing centers that work with students and do seminars on how to be a better writer. Maybe potentially even inviting those faculty in those writing centers at those educational institutions to run a brown bag. Here's an hour and a half, give tips on how to be a good writer in writing reports and memos. These can all continue to help individuals within the chapter to essentially become more effective and more efficient at their job. Now we're kind of want to shift gears. Again, you will have all these results in a University Center for Economic Development technical report probably within the month once the peer review process is. And I really do encourage you and invite you to look at that technical report and then to provide us feedback as we, the chapter, as well as the Nevada Leadership Program and the Nevada System of Higher Education move forward in the development of professional development and curriculum opportunities. But for right now, really quickly wanted to go over with both Brian and Mike and all of you here, 10 of the primary observations and conclusions that we kind of gleaned from the results of the survey. And the first one, the one that I harped on at the very beginning, is ultimately that the demographics of the Nevada APA membership just do not marry up well with the demographic and socioeconomic and demographic profile of the state of Nevada. And based upon that, maybe throwing it out as a question to you, the audience, and maybe start with Mike and Brian here, is this an issue? Is this something that we should concern ourselves with? And if so, what can we do about it?
I definitely think it's an issue because, well, looking around, you're considered one of the young ones, and I think that's an issue, first of all. But,
You get it.
but essentially, if you guys are going to be representing the general public, you need to be a representative of the public. Nevada's getting young, or getting somewhat younger. There's more minorities coming in, and there's definitely changing skill sets. And I think that instead of just having, forget this language, but rich old white men, there needs to be more diversity in the crowd. There needs to be a couple more women. There needs to be more
Well, I think one of the issues that the chapter has to consider is how much does it want to get into affirmative action? And assuming that it does, what is our position? How do we assist organizations in providing not only that opportunity to minorities or majorities in the state of Nevada? How do we help them in the recruitment of that? It was a difficult process, partly because we weren't very sensitized to how important it was to the African American community, and weren't very good at communicating that to those businesses that really, we weren't sure whether they resisted the fact that they didn't want to pay for the name change, or they didn't like the idea of the name change. But those kind of things, I think the chapter needs to begin to look to be an advocate or to do the kind of training that Fred's been business about.
Go ahead.
I'm wondering, we had to do a survey to find out the demographics of the members of the organization. Wouldn't that be something, if we were really interested in affirmative action, that you would just collect as somebody pays their dues, just on that particular thing? The other thing is, there seems to be a session on social sustainability tomorrow.
Very much so, and again, you know, even though the demographics from the survey results don't marry up very well with the demographics, you know, of the state as a whole, you know, I think, you know, to provide the chapter its due, I think the chapter in a lot of ways, you know, is addressing this issue. You know, many of our very, you know, high-profile members, you know, from someone from the North, Council Member Oscar Delgado, elected to the Reno City Council, very, you know, active in the Hispanic community, you know, being of that demographic, you know, has pulled the chapter in a lot of ways, you know, to think about some of the issues that Latinos and the Hispanic community in the state of Nevada face. You know, so it's not all kind of doom and gloom, but again, from my perspective, I see it really as an opportunity for the chapter, you know, to outreach to groups like, you know, Hispanic Chambers of Commerce in both Washoe County and Clark County, you know, various groups, you know, such as the NAACP, that are very active both here in Las Vegas and in Reno. And again, it kind of, for me, harkens back and speaks back, you know, to the originating, you know, start of planning as a profession. The reason why we have planning commissions is because the public demanded representation, you know, in planning decisions that were made. Because up to, you know, the development and utilization of planning commissions in the 1920s and 1930s, it was made via boss politics. You know, it was, you know, a bunch of rich white old men in a smoke-filled back room making decisions as to how public resources would be allocated. And those resources were usually allocated in ways which were very detrimental to everybody but the rich white old, you know, male crowd. And I think that as practicing professional planners and as a chapter, you know, if we want to be the voice, you know, as a chapter for planning issues and advocacy in the state, we need to make sure we know what we need to be advocating for. And the best way to know what we need to be advocating for is by having a membership that can tell us and say, you know, by the way, you know, as a Latino, these are my issues. As an African American, these are my issues. As a millennial, these are my issues. As male, as female, so that the chapter can begin to kind of almost triangulate what the various issues are.
And changing your membership over, it's going to take a lot of time, and especially when you see the breakup. But something that we can directly influence on a day-to-day basis starting today and, you know, moving forward is planners are in a unique situation to be able to influence who's on your planning commissions, who's on your advisory boards, when you set up different organizations, to be cognizant that you're trying to represent the community. And so we've been making a concerted effort of doing that, because if you always go with what you know or what you're accustomed to or the typical recommendation, those people who are actively engaged are going to be more reflective of that membership. So it's going to take time to change that, but take a look at what you can do today, starting today.
Exactly. Paul.
I think one thing that we're not specific enough as a profession is a very, very important part of what we do is listen. Shut up and listen. Because people can tell us so much that we don't know and that we need to know in order to do our jobs.
Yep, absolutely, and you know, again, kind of hats off, you know, to the chapter. You know, I'd like to note that it was the chapter, you know, your membership dues to a degree that helped fund this survey. You know, surveys cost money, and even though my time as an academic and a professor, you know, is provided by the university, you know, the materials for the envelopes, bring the surveys, the postage was paid by the chapter, and that's because the executive committee, you know, when we met over the summer during our executive committee retreat, said, you know, we need to hear from the membership. You know, we need to hear what their concerns are. You know, what skills should we be focusing on? You know, are we representative, you know, of the demographics of the state? So I think that you do have, and speaking as both someone in the inside and the outside, saying you have an executive committee that is willing to listen. Now the question is, who do we want to listen to? You know, what groups do we really want to kind of knock on the shoulder and say, talk to us, tell us what your issues are?
But as a professional, we need to learn to listen to the people we serve, not organizationally, if you will, but in the community as a whole. We need to learn how to do that, and the APA is an excellent vehicle for that sort of training.
Exactly.
I was going to say, the recession caused us to lose a lot of young people through the risks and stuff like that. So I think it's our opportunity right now, as we hire new people, to hire new. We're going to see that diversity appear. I really do. That's what's out there.
And I think we need to convince organizations, especially public organizations, to get out of the last hired, first fired process. Just before I retired, two of what I felt were really very good staff members, unfortunately, last hired, were first fired. I'm not suggesting the skill set of the rest of the planners that were there weren't good, but I will tell you that new planners, especially ones that come out of school, have a much better skill set in the long run, or at least bring a lot of different perspectives. And so, to me, that's an extremely important issue, is to look at who you retain when you get into those kind of situations, and what do you offer those who maybe should be urged to leave, like I was, which was fine. I was entirely okay with being urged to leave. I mean, negotiate a nice retirement package. Fred, do you mind if we maybe kind of jump through some
Sure.
selectively rather than just going through them one by one?
Which one did you want to talk
Well,
about?
number 3.
So number three,
This is just, you know, this sticks in my throat every damn budget year. I get really tired of public officials talking about how they want to have the best staff on the planet, and that they really spend a lot of time recruiting the best staff and hiring the best staff, and then don't turn around and provide any of the resources in order to make sure that they keep up with their professional skills, and to start beginning to look at some of the skills that we've identified that may be outside of what would be considered traditional planning skills. And frankly, I think we've done a terrible job of advocating that. And I'm not just advocating that for certified planners. Sometimes I know we tend to kind of focus on that. When I was on the AICP commission, that was one of the things that really bothered me, is that we didn't go out and do that. But I think we need to advocate the fact that the skill sets, just like a doctor, you wouldn't go to a doctor who hadn't picked up a medical book in 20 years and say, gee, I'd like you to really do an operation on me. Well, why do we somehow suggest that planners, it's okay if they haven't gone to any conference or haven't had the opportunity to go to some kind of specialized educational program, and somehow expect them to still be the best staff we've ever hired and retained. But I think that we, as not only an association, but as managers, are awful at doing that. And we need to, in my opinion, really be more of an advocate and get to elected and appointed officials, and those companies that maybe, again, are reluctant to pay for that, to start doing it. On the other hand, we need to provide the things as an association that are worthwhile for someone to pay for. Yes, ma'am.
I completely agree with you, because coming from Clark County, we have such a limited number of members from our organization. I was recently rehired to the department. I feel very blessed to be able to get back into the profession that I did not even know existed in 1989 when I walked into the city of Las Vegas as a customer from the private sector. And my boss is asking me, oh, put together this land use application, but my background was construction management and surveying and engineering. I had no idea the world of professional planning existed. Now, I am one of the few natives. I know Henderson has more on staff than probably any other jurisdiction locally, and that's always been a trend within Henderson. But when you look at the stats of Clark County, Las Vegas, North Las Vegas, I'm not too versed in Boulder City or even Mesquite, but with that, my question to you is, where do you want to get these future planners from? Because there is no mechanism to have a homegrown planner come out of Nevada. You're talking about a master's program, very admirable. I do not want to take anything away from the progress that you've been able to make within your own university and colleges. But as a child of the 70s and 80s and coming up through this, the educational opportunities, it was never presented. Jared, I hope you don't mind my saying this, but your education coming out of UNLV and kind of landing at Clark County from the architectural school, it does not lend to even letting people know this profession exists. And so to me, with everything that you presented, I think you need to look to find out where you want to get people from to be able to get to the plan.
It's a definite challenge, especially in Nevada, for a variety of reasons. And to just share with you two very quick observations. While I was writing my dissertation at the University of Southern California, it was the comparison, of the future of urban revitalization and economic development in California versus Nevada. And the spin on it was one state is rather progressive and is willing to accept a government lead in those revitalization efforts, a role for planners. The other state is fairly libertarian and in some cases very much anti-supportive of having professional government administrators involved in these activities. And kind of the second story that kind of underlines that difference is prior to my current position, I was the extension educator for cooperative extension in Eureka County, which is located pretty much smack dab center in the state, population of 2,000 people total in the entire county. Very rural, very mining, very ag. And that's part of the problem, from the chapter's perspective of recruiting members, especially related to number 3, that organizations are unwilling to pay, the memberships, even the chapter-only membership of $40 a year, because of that much more libertarian, kind of anti-government on the board for the northern section of the chapter. They were working very closely with the city of Reno for almost a year, making presentations to the neighborhood advisory boards.
And that's a problem, is that we're just kind of this organization no one seems to know about. And if the public doesn't know about us, the elected officials don't care. My sense is that we need to be out there in front as much as possible. And yes, we need to find alternatives to helping our members stay with the organization, even if we have to shift the way dues are done. And I will give the national organization credit for finding different ways of doing that. And I think our local chapter has also made an effort to do that. But I think the bigger thing is that we need to be prominent out there at any time of the year, whether we're financially having problems having organizations fund our members or not. Because when that funding does become available, we should be there trying to be first in line. There's nothing wrong with doing that. And again, you just can't argue the idea of having the best professional staff and not giving them the support of that. I mean, it's an interesting thing is that, and I understand that attorneys and engineers are licensed, but the bottom line is that you don't see their licensing funding going away. When, I'm willing to bet that in the Public Works Department, of course, of the department Bob, that you work for, those engineers licensing costs were never cut. Bet you the DAs didn't all of a sudden cut the funding for the licensing of their attorneys. But there are other professional certifications such as ours that need to be recognized. We need to be more prominent out there, in my opinion. And yes, having been administrator for 30-plus years, it just sits in my craw that I realize I have that problem. But I do understand that it's hard to suggest.
We got time for just one more comment, and then we got to switch gears to our next session. But don't worry, because Brian, Mike, and myself will be staying on the dais, and joined by Cynthia Bowen and Stephanie Garcia-Baus, who have a discussion on kind of the chapter as a whole, or the national chapter as a whole, so we can continue the discussion in the next plenary session. But I want to give you a break and everything. We'll take one more comment, and we'll take, I think we have time for a 10-minute break. We're going to do 5 minutes, 5-minute break, a quick break, and then we'll get back going.
One of the issues you've touched on briefly in some of your remarks, particularly with your dealings with Eureka County, is the intertwining between planning and local politics particularly. That always has seemed like the elephant in the room throughout my planning career. Looking at your curriculum, I don't see anything about that. I think it would be an area worth exploring. I think planners need to, if not get involved in politics, at least understand a little better how politics works and how it affects the planning profession and the plans that they develop.
And this was, a conversation we had is how much do we break, the politics administration dichotomy, the separation between the development of policy and its implementation and management. I'm sure all of us on the bureaucratic side, hate it when an elected official comes into our office outside the confines of a public meeting and starts asking for stuff. To some degree, I think it's fair to say that the majority of us in this room have experienced that. I know I have, having elected officials at the city levels that I've worked for come to my office and say, I'd really like an advance copy of that staff report. And me having to say, no, you don't get it. You get it when the rest of the board gets it, and then having to deal, with the political tension that's caused. On the flip side, I'm sure elected officials do not appreciate it when the bureaucrats say, I'm the expert, do what I tell you. And this becomes, a source of tension between the bureaucracy and the policymakers, and something that we decided not to touch in the formal curriculum because we felt that this is really an opportunity for the veteran planners in the chapter to share their experiences with the junior members of the chapter in the informal brown bags and professional development opportunities. How did you handle that situation? Well, there's a formal chain of command going through a city county manager's office, but there's also the personal developing a relationship, with our elected officials and bureaucrats to, kind of mitigate that tension as well. So we kind of left it for the more informal professional development opportunities to resolve that potential tension.
But just want to add, that was an issue that was noted in the survey. 90% of people said that it's very important to learn how to speak informally and formally with public elected officials, so that's something that can definitely be worked on with the brown bag.
With the brown bag. Thank you very much.